On today's episode of Budget Deck Tech, we're going to be looking at the Vraska Scheming Gorgon Planeswalker deck. We're going to set a challenge and see if we can improve this deck without breaking the bank. So we'll start by giving ourselves a $10 allowance that we can spend on cards to add to this deck. Out of the two rivals of Ixalan Planeswalker decks, the Vraska one definitely feels like the weaker of the two. Let's take a quick look at the cards that come in the deck right now. This is a black-white vampire themed deck with all 60 cards coming from the Ixalan block. So my biggest issue with this deck is that there just isn't a long game here. Your biggest creature is a 4/4, and if your opponent starts throwing down dinosaurs, you're out of luck. Additionally, besides Vraska, there aren't a lot of removal spells here, and just overall, the cards don't really have a synergy. There's no theme to it really, besides vampires. So let's go ahead and clear this deck, and then give ourselves $10 to spend, and let's see what we can come up with. Just a quick side note though, we're only going to be adding cards from the Ixalan block. Let's start with the lands. We're going to keep all 4 copies of Forsaken Sanctuary in the deck, and then we'll have 9 swamps and 9 plains. So that gives us a total of 22 lands, which might seem a little low, but you'll see why shortly. We're going to keep Vraska in the deck, and one of our top priorities will be to get her out as soon as possible. And to help us with that, we have Vraska's Scorn. So this card will bring Vraska from either your deck to your hand, or from your graveyard to your hand. The Planeswalker deck came with 2 copies of these, and we're going to leave both of them in the deck. And now it's time to spend some money. So we'll be running a deck full of vampires, and the easiest way to boost their power toughness is with the Legion Lieutenant. The deck currently comes with 1 copy of this card, but we're going to want to run a full playset. Now this card is $1 a piece, so this is going to eat up a huge amount of our budget, but I think it's well worth it, so we'll add 4 of these cards to the deck. This next card is the backbone of our deck. This card will create the vampire engine, if you will. So Bishop of Rebirth is a 3/4 vampire cleric, and every time it attacks, you get to bring a vampire with mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard directly onto the field. And as you're going to see, most of the vampires in this deck are fairly cheap mana-wise, so this will affect most of the cards out there. This is a card you're going to want to have 4 of in your deck. They're 50 cents a piece, so not too crazy expensive. You're going to want to attack with it every turn, assuming you have creatures in the graveyard. Since the bishop is attacking pretty much every turn, you can guarantee eventually it'll end up in the graveyard. And we'll need a way to bring that card back from the graveyard to our hand, and recover is a great way to do that. The card is super cheap, 15 cents. I do want to add 4 to the deck, so we'll need to purchase 3 more of those. And this is a card that I probably only ever use on the bishop. Next up, we're adding 4 copies of Legion Conquistador to the deck. These cards currently go for 15 cents a piece. This is probably the ideal card to play on your 3rd turn, so you play 1 copy of it, and then you're allowed to go through your deck and bring the other 3 copies into your hand. This just ensures that you have a steady stream of creatures to play, lets you keep the pressure on your opponent, and just going through your deck and pulling these cards out is what makes me feel safe having less lands in this deck. Martyr of Dusk is a 2/1 creature, and when it dies you create a 1/1 vampire token. So we want lots of these tokens, so we actually want this card to die. We want to use it as a chump blocker, we want to attack with it all the time, we want it to die, and then we want to bring it back from the graveyard with our bishop and have it die again. We're going to add 4 of these to the deck, and they're also going for 15 cents a piece. Inspiring Cleric is another card that we actually want to have in our graveyard. It's a card that we want to be able to bring back over and over again just to trigger its enter ability. So I'm going to want a full playset of these in the deck, and we'll actually have to purchase 2 of those at $1/4 a piece to do that. I'm going to be adding a full playset of Forerunner of the Legion to the deck as well. These cards go for 50 cents a piece. So when you play this card, you get to search your deck for any vampire you want and put it on the top of your deck. So if there's a vampire that you really need, this is an easy way to get it to the top of your deck. I also wanted to add a few removal spells just in case my opponent drops a giant dinosaur on me and I don't have Vraska out. So Impale is probably the best one since it can target anything, and it is fairly cheap. I'm going to add 4 of these at 15 cents a piece. The final creature I'm adding is another bishop, and this is one you want to play at the right time. When you play this card, your opponent loses 1 life for every vampire you control, so you want to make sure you do it when you have an army out there. I want to add 2 copies of this card to the deck. We already own 1 from the original deck, and we're going to buy another one with our final quarter. And our final card of the deck is just a quick instant, just a nice way to boost one of your characters just in case. So that in a nutshell is the deck. You want to bring out your army of vampires, pump them up with the Legion Lieutenant, and then if they do die, bring them back with the Bishop of Rebirth. The whole idea is just to have a constant supply of vampires coming and going and just overwhelming your opponent. You may have noticed that there are no flyers in this deck, but I felt that with the amount of removal we have, we didn't really need any flyers in here. I know the deck isn't perfect, but by spending just the $10 here, I think we made some major improvements. Thank you so much for joining me. If you guys could give me a thumbs up, that would be great, and we will see you next time.